So I know, first of all, I'm sure a lot of us have been thinking a great deal about what's happening in the Ukraine. And I think it's especially moving for me in light of the significance of that region in the development of Hasidic thought. So I know for many of us, if we look at the the map of the Ukraine, we see names of places that we associate with great Hasidic thinkers. We see Chernobyl, we see Zhytomyr, and all of these places are so evocative. So today I wanted to look at a text from the Mayor in Mind. Do you mind sitting a little bit over there?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a visitor with me today. My husband is sitting in on the set. Adi, would you mind sharing that text on the screen? And can you make it larger? Great. All right. So this is from Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, who was also known as the Meor Einayim. He was the Chernobyl Rebbe. For those of you who think only of Chernobyl as a radioactive disaster, there's also this other history there. And I wanted to share with you something that came up when I looked for material that would be good for today. So he's discussing Adar. And as you may know, we're in Adar Aleph. We're in the first month of a leap year succession of 2 Adars. And we'll be entering into the second Adar later this week. And he says that, there's this famous phrase, Mi sheniknas Adar marbim b'simcha, and you may know it from the song. When Adar begins, joy increases, right? And for the sake of time, I've left out his whole discussion of this, but he brings from that this idea that Adar, actually, the name Adar is significant because it's bringing together Aleph, which is representative of Hashem, of the divine, and Dar, which is representative of, us living beings on this earth, right? And he's saying, they're brought together. We're brought together and joined in union during the month of Adar. And then he goes on to discuss, what does that mean exactly, or how do we manifest that? And he says, each and every one of us has in us the spark of Da'at from Moshe Rabbeinu. And Da'at, literally it means knowledge, but it's associated with this place of balance where all of our midot, all of our characteristics are held in a perfect balancing point, right? And it's also associated with yichud, which is to say that place of union with the divine, where we feel no barriers between ourselves and the divine. And so he says, Moshe Rabbeinu had this quality of da'at, and there's a spark of it in all of us, right? That it sort of overflowed from him and spread out into all of us. And each of us has this little spark, even if it's just a teeny bit, right? And then he says, so how can we manifest this thing? If we have this spark, maybe it's just a teeny bit, how do we manifest it? And he says, isn't it the case that Moshe Rabbeinu was praised for this characteristic in the Torah, the characteristic of, and he's going to give us the quote, now Moshe himself was very humble, more so than any other human being on earth. So that quality that he was praised for is anava, it's humility. But what's interesting as this text goes on is that the Chernobyl Rebbe repeatedly uses not this word anava, but rather this word shefel ruach, which literally means humility. Or sorry, not literally, but idiomatically it means humility. And I'm actually going to put that phrase in the chat for anybody who wants to see it written in Hebrew. So idiomatically, it means humility, but literally, it means like a low spirit. But the word for low here, interestingly enough, it's not about like height, like we think of, but it's low as in like a low tide or an ebbing, right? And ruach, of course, it's spirit, but it's also breath or wind. So in a sense, it's almost like it makes me think of that expiration and almost the sigh that comes with that. The other thing that I think it's really helpful to know when we're thinking about anava, and Adi, if you don't mind scrolling down. So I brought something from Simcha Bunim, and this is a practice that he had that is very familiar for, I imagine many of you know this story that he said he used to carry, or that a person should carry, two sort of little peteks, two little notes to themselves, two little reminders. And one should say, I'm but dust and ashes. And the other one should say, the world was created for me, right? And both of these are quotes. I've actually given you the context for that. So the idea is that anava, it's not just sort of, it's not that negative humility that we think of frequently, where it's all about kind of being down on yourself, but rather it's living in this place of balance, right? Where you're able to say, okay, I'm just dust and ashes. I'm just this limited human being created from the earth, created from dust and ashes. But at the same time, it's as if the whole world was created for me. So I wanted to work with these ideas in balance in our sit. And Adi, if you wouldn't mind leaving that there, the text there for them, for this sit. And I'm going to invite everyone, first of all, to come to sit in a comfortable position. And for those of you who come regularly, you know that you want to find a position that's upright, right? But relaxed, sort of in balance, like that anava, upright and reaching towards the heaven, but at the same time, with that sense of relaxation, your body sinking into the earth. And now turn your attention to your breath. And specifically, I want to make the suggestion today that you tilt that attention towards the exhale, towards that shefel ruach. Just noticing that sensation of letting go the breath. And you may notice that at the tail end of each exhale, there's a moment of balance. The breath has ebbed, but there's a moment of pause before you automatically breathe back in that air. Allow yourself to explore that moment of balance in the breath, the moment of transition from one breath to the other. And continue like this, tilting your attention towards that ebbing breath and that moment of balance at the end of the breath. Before the body draws in a new breath to renew itself. Now, if you find that your mind is distracted by thoughts, ambitious thoughts of planning, or judgmental thoughts, am I doing this right? You may try using those phrases from Simcha Bunim. Va'anochi afar va'efer, bishvili nivra ha'olam. I who am but dust and ashes, the world was created for me. And then return to the breath with that ebbing of the breath, receding like the tide.
Thank you so much, Cantor Heather Batchelor, for leading us so beautifully again today. And friends, we seal this practice by offering an opportunity for those in mourning, observing yard sites, or it's your custom to participate in Kaddish. To do so, you can put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box if you'd like. And for those who are not reciting Kaddish, to please stay present, to be present for those who are, bringing your kind, compassionate awareness and attention and support to them. And invite those who are reciting Kaddish to join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite Kaddish together. Yitgadal, Yitkash, Shemei Rabba, Yama, Dibra, Kidushe, V'yamich Malchute, V'chayecho, V'yamechon, V'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'kariv, Yimo, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach, V'olam Ulamei Amayah. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbarach, Yitzase, Hadar, Yitalel, Yikushan, La'elam, Yikol Birchata, V'shirata, V'tushbata, V'amata, Devamim, Shlama Rabba Mishmaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'Yisrael, Yuru Amen. Shalom, 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 Aleinu Yisrael, Yashvei Tevei, Yimru, Amen. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to those who joined us perhaps for the first time. We hope to see you anytime the rest of the week for the daily sit. I'm going to put in the chat box the schedule of our leaders this week. Tomorrow we are being led by Sarah Waxman of At the Well. Looking forward to that. A little bit in advance of Rosh Chodesh for Adar Sheni, the second Adar this year. And of course, thanks to our teacher for today, Cantor Heather Batchelor, for leading us again so beautifully. And looking forward to some conversation with Heather in a moment. For those who are able and would like to stay on for some questions and answers and just reflecting on your experience in the teaching today. Thanks to Adi Stein for holding our space, our tech space, and Mishkan so beautifully as always. And thanks to our sponsor for today, Susan Mirbach, for sponsoring our practice in honor of Kenlin on the occasion of your birthday. Yom Huledet Sameach, many more in good health. And as I mentioned, for those who are leaving now, we hope you stay safe and well. We'll hope to see you again soon, perhaps tomorrow. For those who are staying on, if you have a question about the teaching today or about the experience of your practice or just a reflection, you can put that in the chat box. If it's a question, please put it, preface it with by putting question in all caps. Makes it a little bit easier to catch that. And Heather, again, as always, beautiful. I just want to ask you about the melody at the end, the nigun, because that sounded very much like a melody that I know from the Klezmatics
It is
Wonder
a
Wheel
melody from the
album.
cosmetics.
And
Yeah,
I was wondering if, oops, are you muted? Maybe? No? Oh,
no,
it's
no.
my sound, my bad.
Okay.
I was wondering if they based that on a nigun or that was the
You know
melody.
what? I could reach out and find out. Honestly, I mean, if I would have been a little bit more diligent, I would have found a good, a good um, um, Ukrainian Hasidic melody, because there's many
Yeah.
of them.
Get to
But
work on that, please.
yeah, but
This
I
was
was
great.
sort
No, it was
of,
great. And what I appreciated about it, and I want to lead that into the question about the teaching, um, which was beautiful, as I said, is that it had sort of a part that went up and a part that went down. So I thought it was really great because you were suggesting, tell me if I got it right. First of all, just to review, the teaching by the Mayor Naim here is that there's some connection between the joy, the simcha of Adar, and the quality of humility, right? And
yeah, and we could even, I mean, I didn't quite go into this, but I mean, it even Shevel Ruach also has an association. It could even be depression, right?
mhm, right.
Which is really interesting because, of course, you think Adar, you think of this kind of out of control, manic frivolity, right? But
Not
he's
feeling
certainly,
that much these days, I think,
no,
right?
no, we might not be feeling that. We might be feeling more of the Shefel Ruach, but I thought it was really interesting that it sort of suggests that there's a value and a place in being with our low spots
Mm-hmm,
just as much as being with our high spots,
mm-hmm,
right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
we certainly live in a society that's like positive, positive, positive energy all the time, right? And so um, I like the fact that just in the choice of words, and I think it is a really interesting choice of words. There's other words he could have used, and certainly one would have thought he would have chosen anava, since it's the word that is used in the Torah portion that he references.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's an accident. He's using this idiom that has so much packed into it,
Right.
so
But I
much
don't think
potential.
yeah, I don't think we need to there's always an inclination to say what's the teaching here? And then what's the specific teaching? And it feels to me like there's a range of options that you offered. So for example, the Shval Ruach, the lowly spirit, and I really love that image of, low tide, of the receding waters, the receding breath. And so in that, if, from that angle, the joy was in resting in the receding breath. And I couldn't tell if your intention was, or what, it doesn't really matter whether it was in noticing the receding or noticing the point that led into the receding or noticing the point at the end of the receding breath. Did you have
So,
an intention there?
I mean, it would be really nice if we were awake to all of those, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
I mean, ideally, but I think that using the receding breath and that balancing point as sort of the anchor for the attention,
mm-hmm,
um, most of us staying 100% awake all the time is pretty difficult. I did feel like when I was sort of experimenting with this practice beforehand, that there is something about the receding breath, about letting go of the breath, that feels a little bit like letting go of my ego, letting go of
mm-hmm,
my need to always reach higher, or to judge
mm-hmm,
myself for not.
mm-hmm. And
There's something,
there's the joy in that. Is
yes,
that, yeah.
yeah, I think there is a real joy in that for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
um So yeah, I also want to acknowledge there was someone who got it. Yes, it's from
mm-hmm,
that album, that the tune was from the album from the Clasmatics. I don't know if they drew it from someplace else because they do draw a lot of stuff from traditional sources. But I also thought it was really lovely. The words of that are so lovely in that it does also suggest humility. The words are, I'm going to get through this
Right.
world the best I can, and I'm going to leave this world behind the best I can. Um,
Yeah, that's what he got.
so
That's what he got through.
yeah,
What he
those
got
are
through
Woody
words, right?
Guthrie's words, right?
That's a
Exactly.
must-have, by the way, people. That
Yeah.
album is just
It's
incredible.
a wonderful, wonderful album. And I think that it also reflects that sort of like, I'm going to do the best I can. And it's sort of, again, like that, you know, we're not, it's not our job to finish the task, but we're not permitted to sort of let ourselves off the hook from participating, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I felt like using that tune. I sort of thought it's Misha Mavin, the one who the people who know about it will get it, right? So I see there are a few people out there
It
who
really
got
worked. It worked. It was beautiful. I loved it.
yeah.
The other thing was the Simcha Bunim, the two slips of paper, the two, that people, I have a coin here somewhere that has it on both sides of the coin. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever done this before, but I actually, for me, for my sake, the world was created, Bishvili Nivra Haolam. I was doing that on the inhalation, the kind of expansive self.
Yeah.
And then, oh, Bishvili Nivra Haolam, for my sake, the world was created. Then the out breath, Anochi Afar Ve'efer, I'm but dust and ashes. That was actually really, I really appreciate. I got some joy from that.
Good. Good. Yes. Yes. Um, yeah, and I think also that it's interesting because I'm reading this also sort of um, thinking about my friend Shmuel Bornstein, who I've been working with a lot of his material, and he talks about he also talks about joy and sort of this joy that comes from an equanimity, right? So not necessarily the joy that comes from like, oh, I got what I wanted. So now for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to feel like euphoric.
Right,
Um, but a
right.
joy that comes from sort of a place of being in balance or in equanimity.
Yeah, I think it's really important and helpful that you point out that, first of all, there are a lot of different ways we can understand simcha, joy, and especially, I mean, even before the current crisis, um, it's been a hard for a lot of us, maybe all of us, to experience the kind of, you know, let go, cut loose kind of joy that we associate with Adar and Purim. But this is a really helpful reminder that, joy comes in many different forms, and it can be kind of like a more sober, I guess, kind of joy, right? That you're suggesting that really has to do with, I don't know, sober, less ecstatic, I don't know, kind of joy that we can feel. I guess the question is like, what's the kind of joy we can feel in times like these, really, right? What does that teaching mean in wartime? What does it mean in times
Right.
of pandemic, right? Is it, or do you just say like, there's no time for joy now? It's, inappropriate or even obscene to feel joy. But maybe there are kinds of joy we can experience even while we are experiencing and facing and meeting, hopefully, big challenges.
Yeah, I don't know that it's not ecstatic, but it might be a more quiet kind of um, um, ecstatic. But
Yeah.
I'm not exactly certain about that. I mean,
Can you dance to it is the question.
yeah, can you dance to it? Right, exactly, exactly.
I would say a slow dance to this one.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, looking, a lot of beautiful comments here. I'm just looking if there are any questions. Um, I guess what I'm getting from it, Heather, is the joy in there's a phrase in the Marge Piercy, oops, sorry, hitting my bell there. There's a phrase, Marge Piercy's creative interpretation of Nishmat Kol Chai has this phrase in it that I always love every time I read it, which is let the whining of the ego cease. Not sure what Hebrew she's creatively translating there, but that always hits the mark with me. Let the whining of the ego cease. And it struck me that that's the kind of humility, the shval ruach that you're describing. Just stop whining. Stop whining, or stop whining, stop complaining, stop comparing, stop. And that there is a lot of joy, I think, in that, in that cessation of the whining, and it means being able then to see and respond to what's going on. So that's my takeaway from it that you sparked in me. Looking to see here. Lovers in a Dangerous Time by Bruce Coburn. I will have to check that out. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? So Karen said that she was focusing on that moment of balance. And actually, I had to say that idea, it was a practice I'm doing yoga teacher training, and one of the sessions did working on those sort of transition points. I remember years ago being at a retreat with Sheila, where she was teaching walking meditation, and said, be careful of your transitions. So usually walking meditation, you're walking back and forth, and there's always this moment where you turn. And she was so right that was frequently exactly where my attention would go, someplace else, and it is interesting that it's related to Ukraine, because that word comes from this Slavic word for like a border, right? Which is part of the reason that has been, it's been functionally the border that goes back and forth so often, which has been a lot of what their history has been about. But right, so those borders, those are that we had to pay attention to them, right? They're a place where we can get distracted, but they're also a place where if we can keep our attention there, maybe real change, maybe real transformation can happen.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you for that, and thanks for thank you also for just weaving in, awareness of our connection to that land, the legacy and the teachings that emerged from our people in that land, and the music and the culture, and it's deeply poignant, the whole thing, and of course tremendously concerning, at the very least for all of us. And it's good to be together. I mean, if anything else, we know we need to be together, and this gives us a wonderful opportunity to do that, and to practice so that we can meet the moment with as much clarity and courage and wisdom as possible. So Heather, thank you so much for your ongoing, constant contributions to that, and so glad your husband can join us today too, off screen. Say hi. We'll say hi. Doesn't have to make an appearance. It's okay. And of course, thanks to everyone for being with us. We hope to see you tomorrow with Sarah Waxman, who'll be leading us on Tuesday. And we hope everyone stays safe and well. And we join with you in prayers for peace and safety for all peoples, and especially the people of Ukraine.